We can now move to the examination of item 7 on the draft plan for the use of the resources of the Intangible Cultural Heritage Fund in 2020-2021. Our functions as a committee are laid down in Article 7 of the Convention. One of these functions is to propose to the General Assembly of States Parties a draft plan for the use of the resources of the fund. Since we are meeting here in the year before the next General Assembly, we need to examine the spending plan for the next 2 years as proposed by the Secretariat. This is an important subject for the committee and for the Convention as a whole, as many of the achievements by the committee and the Secretariat over the past 2 years have been made possible thanks to the Intangible Cultural Heritage Fund, to which the state parties contribute year after year. I now give the floor to Mr. Curtis. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. This important document, pertains to item 7, and there are 2 documents that pertain to this item. The document 14com.inf.7 is an information document about the past. It reports on the implementation of the fund from the 1st of January 2018 until the 30th of June 2019, and contains in annex the financial statement on the use of the fund issued by the Bureau of Financial Management. For the sake of time and efficiency, I will not present the details the content of this document, but I do stand ready to answer questions delegates may have on the information document. Document 14com/7 Rev 2 is the main document and is made up of 2 main sections. The first part presents the recent trends in the implementation of the fund. It provides a detailed analysis on the evolution of expenditures and incomes until the current biennium. The second part is about the future. It proposes a draft plan for the use of the resources of the fund for the next biennium and the first 6 months of 2022. To this end, a draft plan for the use of the resources of the fund is annexed to the working document. Allow me to first present the recent trends. During the 39C5 biennium, the total income of the fund has diminished by 4.6% compared to the previous biennium, reaching around 4.4 million. This confirms the decreasing trend of the previous biennium, in which 15.6% decrease had already been witnessed. This decline is the result of the reduction in the amount of voluntary supplementary contributions, despite the generous contributions recently pledged by several states parties in November 2009, as mentioned under the previous item. However, the largest source of income for the fund comes from assessed contributions. These represent 91% of total income for the period of January, 91%, of total income for the period of 1st of January 2018 to 30th of June 2019. And allow me please to give you a brief update regarding the status of assessed contributions based on the latest statement issued by the Bureau of Financial Management. As at 30 November 2019, the arrears amount to $463,095, United States, of which 212,538 correspond to unpaid contributions of previous years. In this regard, allow me to mention that as of 30 November 2019, 44 state parties had not paid their contribution for 2018 and 2019. 44 had not paid both. This represents 1/4 of all states parties. Meanwhile, the expenditure rate of the latest plan approved by the General Assembly is on the increase, reaching 47.2% as at 30th of June 2019. According to the latest forecast, the expenditure rate at the end of the biennium may exceed about 60% of the received assessed contributions, which would represent the highest expenditure rate of the fund since 2010, shortly after it became operational in 2008. As you can see on the graph shown on the screen, expenditures in the orange line have for the first time surpassed 4 million and represent 112% of the compulsory assessed contributions due for 2018 and 2019, shown in dark blue line. For the first time in the fund, the implementation is exceeding the income in an assessed period. Of course, it's 112% because of the surplus which was there before. And this increase is directly linked to the significantly increased implementation of the international assistance mechanisms. As a result, the overall approved budget indicated in the light blue line, which has been rising until the current biennium, is expected to decrease for the period of the 40C5, 2020 to 21, from 8.6 million to approximately 7 million. As you can now see on the screens, during the 2018 and 2019 biennium, expenditures increased by 78% compared to the previous biennium, bringing the expenditure rate to 49 as at 30th of June 2019. Again, indicating that state parties have been making a significantly higher use of the international assistance mechanisms corresponding to budget lines 1 and 2 of the fund. So overall, the financial situation of the fund is sound from an operational point of view. States have an increased capacity to access funds that support programs and projects. Okay, sorry. States have an increased capacity to access funds that support programs and projects which contribute to safeguarding of living heritage. The Secretariat now has an increased ability to respond to the requests thanks to the newly created Safeguarding Implementation and Monitoring Team. So what does this mean for the future? Since expenditures are on the increase, it is foreseen that the total budget of the fund, and therefore the amount of financial resources available to support state efforts, will of course gradually diminish in the future. It's not an immediate concern, and indeed we should be aiming at having the fund fully implemented each cycle. But this reality does indicate that voluntary contributions will become ever more and even more important in the future to support the implementation of the convention at the national level, at the very least to the way we're doing it now, and if we want to increase, there will be need for more. Now that the fund is in a healthier operational situation, the Secretariat is also in a better position to pursue such voluntary supplementary contributions. And as I mentioned before, some promising signs have been observed, and several donors have recently committed to make voluntary supplementary contributions. So allow me, Madam Chairperson, now to move on to the future plan for the implementation of the fund, as summarized under Annex 1 in document Rev 2. The draft plan covers a period of 24 months, which means 2020 to 21, as well as the first 6 months of 22. The proposed budget for the first 6 months of 22 corresponds to a quarter, 1/4, of the total budget approved for the 2-year period 2021. Should the draft plan be endorsed by the committee at the present session, it will be submitted for approval at the 8th session of the General Assembly in June 2020, June next year. For the period of 1st of January 2020 to 31st of December 2021, the amount of the spending plan to be submitted to the next session of the General Assembly is estimated to be approximately 7 million. In line with the priorities of the fund, as set out in Chapter 11.1 of the operational directives, it is proposed that the majority of the resources be allocated to providing international assistance to state parties, meaning budget lines 1, 1.1, and 2. The combined percentage of these 3 lines, 64.75, remains the same as during the previous biennium. Budget line 1, international assistance, will be assigned once more with the majority of the allocation of the fund at 51.96%. Budget line 1.1, safeguarding, this is the Safeguarding Implementation and Monitoring Team, will be assigned to 7.79%. Budget line 2, preparatory and technical assistance, will decrease from 4.5 to 2%, which is actually reflecting the actual expenditure we have been experiencing. The slight decrease for budget line 1 and budget line 2 will offset the necessary increase of budget line 1.1, which is required to maintain the minimal amount needed to cover the cost of the 3 extra budgetary fixed-term posts created in 2018. Budget line 3, other functions of the committee, will be maintained at 20% of the total approved budget. This line is dedicated to upstream work at the global level, which allows then for the implementation of projects and programs at national and regional levels through voluntary contributions. As previously approved by the committee, funds allocated to this budget line will be specifically dedicated to the capacity building program and its upstream work, the integration of ICH into development plans, policies, and programs, with a particular focus on education and the safeguarding of ICH in emergency situations, again for the upstream work, the improvement in the management of knowledge, information, and monitoring of the Convention, the promotion of the objectives of the Convention through awareness raising and outreach. As in preceding plans, the present draft decision proposes that the committee authorizes the Secretariat to make transfers between activities within budget line 3, other functions of the committee. While in previous biennia, the committee authorized such transfers up to a cumulative amount equivalent to 2% of the initial total allocation. The proposed draft resolution takes into consideration the recent appropriation resolution adopted last month by UNESCO's General Conference. It is therefore proposed that such transfers between activities be authorized up to 5% of the initial total allocation. For the 40C5, it will mean up to $70,000. Budget lines 4, 5, 6, and 7 will be maintained in general at their respective percentages, with slight adjustments based on the experience of the current biennium. As was the case in the current biennium, the present draft decision proposes that committee continue to authorize the Secretariat to operate transfers between budget lines 4, 5, and 6 up to 30% of their initial total allocation. This flexibility allows the Secretariat to respond to as many requests for financial assistance as possible across the different categories of participants. I remind you, these are the participants to the statutory meetings of the Convention. With this same concern in mind, the draft decision also proposes to extend this flexibility to transfers between budget line 7 and budget lines 4, 5, and 6, as it has been observed that the use of funds allocated to budget line 7 can significantly vary from one year to another, depending on the country of residence of members of the evaluation body. So these are the fees for the evaluation body members, and depending on the tickets and where they live, the amounts vary significantly. In this regard, allow me to mention that thanks to the flexibility given by the General Assembly and the Committee this biennium, the Secretariat has been able to respond to most of the requests for financial assistance to participate in the 13th and 14th session of the Committee. As per Resolution 7GA8, the Secretariat will inform the General Assembly and the Committee at their respective next session of the exact amount transferred between budget lines 4, 5, and 6. The Reserve Fund having already reached the target of 1 million at the end of the previous biennium, no allocation is proposed under budget line 8. Finally, before ending, I would like to bring to your attention 2 decisions of UNESCO's Executive Board, taken respectively in 2016, 200 EX Decision 19, and in 2017, 201 EX Decision 24. These 2 decisions affect the financial regulations of all special accounts, including the fund of the 2003 Convention, as they call for the alignment of the financial regulations of all special accounts, and we discussed these earlier. In conformity with both decisions, the Secretariat will prepare draft revisions to the financial regulations of the fund, which will be submitted for approval to the next General Assembly. Based on our initial assessment, revisions are not expected to bring any major changes to the functioning of the fund, as it already operates under comprehensive financial regulations. I have come, Madam Chairperson, to the end of my presentation. I hope that I provided all the information that the committee members would require to examine this important item, and I remain, of course, at your disposal to answer any questions. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis, for this detailed presentation of the plan for the use of its resources for the next period, 2020-2021. Before coming to the adoption of the decision on the proposed plan, I would like to open a general debate and give the opportunity to members of the committee to raise their questions, which I will ask the Secretariat to answer after the debate. The floor is open now. Okay, Austria.
Thank you. Please let us renew our appreciation for the Secretariat's work. Its efforts are clearly reflected in the figures in front of us when we see, for instance, that the utilization of the ICH fund in budget line 1 and in budget line 2 have increased in the biennium by 78%. We know that the main reason is the increase in the international assistance mechanism, implying, of course, additional workload for the Secretariat. It is highly likely that this trend will continue in future cycles. However, we agree that we should start thinking about how to ensure equitable access to the fund also in the long run, for instance, by determining priorities or maximum amounts per country in a given time. We think special attention should be paid to budget line 3, other functions of the committee, given the decrease in voluntary contributions, which is a sad reality. The funds from this budget line will help us achieve our objectives set for our two priorities, capacity building as well as ICH and education. And beyond that, the budget line has to cover a number of other very important tasks, like the management of knowledge, information and monitoring, including the website. In general, we think we have a balanced budget in front of us, although the biggest budget shift, 2.59%, has to go to staff costs rather than direct assistance or safeguarding measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Austria. Now, please, Philippines.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, and we'd like to thank the Secretariat for this document. Very briefly, we'd like to seek clarification regarding paragraph 18 in the report, where a number where it's mentioned that educational institutions will be cooperation will be set forth with these institutions. We just like to ask which educational institutions are being referred to in this case. And secondly, we note that the 20% budget line is very important, dedicated to other, quote, other functions of the committee. We would just like to request if we could receive a more detailed breakdown of the envisioned activities and amounts concerned. This could be done maybe, of course, in a supplemental, maybe information document, but for our purposes here and for the next 2 years, it would be good to have, let's say, just a bit of a taste of what the 20% will be primarily devoted to. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippines. Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We thank the Secretariat for the report. We have one question to the Secretariat. In his report, he mentioned that there is a decline in assessed contributions to the ICH fund, namely 44 countries, if I'm not mistaken, they did not paid their assessed contribution, which amounts more than $1.4 million to the ICH fund, which I believe also creates additional problems for the proper implementation of the convention. So my question is whether the Secretariat envisage any possible measures for this issue of the unpaid contributions in the nearest future, and what measures can be reflected upon related to for instance, the access of unpaying states to the international mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you, Azerbaijan. I will now give the floor to Mr. Curtis in order to answer some questions.
Okay. I'll start with the question, if I may, in reverse order of Azerbaijan. Indeed, and perhaps the situation today may not be as bad as it is when the document, because that number refers to 2018 and 2019, and indeed some countries pay later in the financial year. However, it is a concern. At this stage, perhaps it is, at the moment, really the only provision that is restrictive on member states is the ability to run for membership of the committee in relation to unpaid contributions. We would be starting a new debate if any other restrictions or measures would be taken. I'm not sure if that is now, but perhaps this is something that could be discussed, perhaps in relation to listing mechanisms. We are not proposing at this stage. We are flagging that it is an issue. The regulations say that if you are in areas of your assessed contributions, you cannot be on the committee. Other than that, perhaps this comes up in the discussion on the listing mechanisms. I'm not sure. I don't know. Well, we haven't particularly thought of specific measures at this stage. Now, for the questions from the Philippines, the paragraph 18, indeed, we have been doing mainly in a series of regions, networking among higher education institutions in order to foster to get more universities interested in creating postgraduate courses in the field of intangible cultural heritage. So in Asia Pacific region, it's been working mainly with our Bangkok office, but now with ICHCAP, where we have, I don't know the numbers off the top, but I think some 20 to 30 universities who now cooperate in the network from across the region. We've had similar in Latin America through our office in Montevideo. We've been working on those. So it's a number of, I don't have the list of universities right now to give you, but there are significant numbers, and we've also, with our office in Harare, I believe, networked for universities in Africa. So this budget pertains to helping sustain these networks and providing kickoffs to them, ultimately looking for partners to sustain the networks. At this stage, the issue is that there's very few universities that actually do integrated ICH coursework at the postgraduate level. And so we're trying to get them. We could at some stage, I'm sure in another report on the work we're doing, give you the list of universities that are there. For the other functions of the committee, yes, indeed, I think it is possible. We do have, I don't know, we presented, I think, when we go to the Bureau, in the more detailed sense after the General Assembly, when it's looking for the next 6 months. So at that stage, there is a more detailed breakdown of the 20% of the other functions of the committee than appears in this document. Some of this, if I may say so, are the mysteries of budgeting and financing to me, which I try to adopt to. But yes, we do have that data, and we can make it available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis, for this additional information. I believe we have given this issue careful consideration, and we are ready now to move on to adopting the draft decision. Please refer to document 7 Rev 2 and its draft decision in paragraph 28. It's on screen. We'll go through paragraph by paragraph.
Sorry, before we... there's an observer, but we've opened... we've opened the decision, so we've started to discuss. Can they wait till after the decision? We've started the decision, and normally they shouldn't discuss during a decision. So can they wait till after the decision?
We are going to wait... Can we take them right now? Sorry, I'll give the floor to NGOs.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, for the opportunity for the ICH NGO Forum to intervene within this agenda item. The Forum appreciates the support provided out of the Intangible Cultural Heritage Fund to support the participation of NGOs from developing countries. This has had a direct and strengthened impact on the collaborations among NGOs, which are positively reflecting on the current and potential advisory functions that accredited NGOs provide to the committee. Since 12.com in Jeju, the ICH NGO Forum established a framework for its annual meetings, which are held prior to the kickoff of the IGC sessions and continue during the course of these sessions. And so while the official 14.com sessions have started today, the ICH NGO Forum yesterday and the day before held largely successful capacity building and concept developing meetings, which directly focused on the current and potential advisory functions that NGOs provide under the Convention, and regional needs, opportunities, and challenges. While on Sunday, the Forum held a symposium, which also addressed relative and significant topics. Madam Chair, the ICH NGO Forum considers these activities necessary for the work of NGOs and their development under the Convention, and therefore we kindly request that the assistance provided to NGOs from developing countries be extended to cover both days of the Forum's activities, which is the Saturday and Sunday before the IGC sessions, and not only one day as it currently is now. At the same time, we recommend for NGOs who benefit from the fund to be formally requested to not only be present during the committee sessions, as they are currently requested to be, but during the Forum's activities also. Furthermore, the ICH NGO Forum continues to strengthen its organisational framework, and with this, its steering committee takes on an increasing scope of activities and responsibilities in the pursuit of a stronger forum in support of the committee, and therefore, we kindly request that support from the fund is also extended to the ICH NGO Forum's 7 elected steering committee members to ensure their active and full participation in the committee and General Assembly sessions, regardless of their NGOs belonging to developing countries or not. Lastly, to help counter the challenge of the regional imbalance within the Forum, we recommend to the committee to make increased use of funds to support capacity building activities aimed at sustaining and developing NGOs in underrepresented regions. Thank you.
Thank you, NGOs, for your intervention. Do you want the floor to say something, Mr. Curtis?
First give to if any committee members want, otherwise I will speak.
Any committee members want to say something about this? Okay. Go
ahead. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairperson, and I thank the Speaker of the NGO for her intervention. Indeed, the work of the NGO Forum is becoming more and more important, and in many ways more and more aligned with the work of the committee. And the discussions happening in the NGO Forum seem to be moving in greater synergy with the discussions of the committee. Some of these requests do have financial consequences on the fund. And in any case, any authorization of these kinds of changes would ultimately go to the General Assembly. But if I understand the first request to expend a day of DSA for allowing for participation in the work of the ICH NGO Forum, should the committee so wish, that could probably be absorbed through the 30% flexibility given. But of course, the more days you give, the less people you have. I mean, the fund doesn't grow relationally. So it's either cover more people with less days or more days with less people. That's a decision that has to be made. The second one, to say all steering committee members, even if from developed countries, is somewhat problematic because I don't think that provision exists anywhere else in the convention. It's the same for committee members. Committee members from developing states can get access to participation and support, but from developed countries don't. So there could be a question of consistency with the various operations of the convention. And finally, the third one, for capacity building, again, here there is the international assistance section of the fund. And I know that it means that, but the international assistance section of the fund is for states parties. But to use the fund for projects on capacity building the recognized mechanism is international assistance. Perhaps some of you can contact with various institutions such as national commissions for Unesco and look for requests in international assistance, but that could imply a rather significant, reappropriation or redirection of the funds for the current system. Again, when we take from somewhere, when we give to somewhere, we have to take it from somewhere else. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Armenia.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je crois que néanmoins, cette préoccupation qui s'exprime devrait pouvoir faire l'objet d'un examen. Et s'agissant de ce point de l'ordre du jour sur la réflexion sur la participation des organisations non gouvernementales à la mise en œuvre de la Convention, peut-être serait-il utile de garder à l'esprit les préoccupations qui viennent d'être exprimées ici par un représentant de l'ONG, puisque c'est quand même un des éléments qui fait partie de la réflexion. Merci.
Merci, Arménie. We can go now through the draft decision 14.7, and we will proceed paragraph by paragraph. Paragraph 1, citing the documents we have examined. Adopted. Paragraph 2, recalling the Convention's article that assigns the committee the task of preparing a draft plan for the use of the resources of the fund, and the General Assembly's resolution by which the current plan was approved. Adopted. Paragraph 3, recalling the two decisions taken by UNESCO's Executive Board concerning the alignment of financial regulations of special accounts. Are there any objections? I see none. Adopted. Paragraph 4, calling upon all state parties to ensure that their assessed contribution is paid at the earliest opportunity. Adopted. Paragraph 5, to welcome the recent positive trends in the implementation of the fund. Adopted. Paragraph 6, calling upon all states parties to consider making voluntary contributions, in particular in light of the foreseen decrease of the fund dedicated to international assistance. Adopted. Paragraph 7, deciding that our accounts will stop on 31 December 2019 and that our plan will be based on the available balance at the time. Adopted. Paragraph 8, to submit to the 7th General Assembly the draft plan included in Annex 1 of the document that we just discussed, including the provisional clause regarding the period between the end of 2020-21 biennium and the 9th session of the General Assembly in 2022. Adopted. Paragraph 9. Kuwait? Okay, Kuwait, please.
I just want to make sure, because you said the 7th session of the General Assembly, and it says the 8th session. I just want to make sure.
It's
Because I heard you saying it's in the 7th session of the General Assembly, where it's in the draft amendment, it says the 8th session.
It is in its 8th session.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Paragraph 9, proposing to continue with the current practices of delegating to our Bureau the approval of those expenditures that are proposed by the Secretariat within the scope of the other functions of the committee as defined by the Convention. Please, Philippines.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is in relation to also our question earlier about that 20% budget line. And since you know, the activities under the 20% budget line are so important that that really for the benefit of all states parties, we're wondering whether it shouldn't be just the Bureau deciding upon the 20%, but either the committee or the General Assembly. We know that as a Bureau member this year, the past year, we have done this, but in a spirit of more transparency and also inclusiveness, and that all stakeholders should be involved in the decision making, perhaps, and we pose this question to other committee members, whether it shouldn't be the committee to take a closer look at those allocations in that 20%, or the General Assembly doing this. So if there's a feeling that we should be more inclusive and transparent, then we would propose an amendment to this paragraph. And instead of the Bureau put in there that the next committee session or the next session of the General Assembly should decide upon the utilization. So perhaps at this stage, we'd just like to listen to other committee members and to see what their views are on this, and then proceed accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, just before we listen to other committee members, I will give the floor to Mr. Curtis.
Yeah, without wanting to just to be aware that we have a calendar issue in relation to our budget, which is different to other bodies, particularly World Heritage, simply because the General Assembly is in June, and the budget year starts in January. So we do our budgets in terms of percentages. It's only at the GA that we have the actual amounts. That doesn't stop a larger look into the 20%. But it would be difficult, for example, to have, would have to be in terms of percentages if it was a committee. So just to think of if there's any decision of those practical and very important practical. Or we could move the committee to June and the GA to December. Then it would be more aligned, yeah.
Okay, so can we adopt paragraph 9 as shown on screen? See, again? Philippines.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's really a scheduling question, if we heard correctly, that what we're approving is the budget for next year, right? But the 20% allocation is presented to the Bureau after, it's not next year that it'll be presented. When would that be presented? So we're in a way approving something that way in advance before seeing it. And that's the question for my delegation, that we're actually approving, okay, the overall envelope, but without knowing what's inside it. And we'd like to know what's inside it before approving it, at least have a better sense. And that's I think the principle behind our intervention now. So, and our concern really, we think we should get a better information feedback from the Secretariat before we approve the 20% in general. Then, so we're looking at the language in 9 and how our preoccupation could be addressed. And
thank you,
I'm
Philippines.
looking to my neighbor here to see if he has any ideas.
Thank you.
Palestine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, we are puzzled because indeed what has been explained by the Secretariat, it's a problem of a calendar. The Secretariat raises the possibility of changing the dates of the committee and the General Assembly. But there should be another solution. Maybe the Secretariat can provide us with something more creative. Could it be possible, Mr. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If I may, the fact that we have our GA in June and General Assembly, General Assembly in June and Committee in December is a huge headache for us in terms of budget. It means we need to foresee in advance 6 months every 2 years and then reabsorb it into the budgeting once we've done it. So it would be much easier for us to do that. However, if I may, the historical reason was member states want a distance between the World Heritage Committee and the ICH Committee. So that's one question of the schedule. That means we are unable to give the exact amounts. However, we could accommodate percentages. As you see, we're giving you percentages here. That's not impossible. But what we can't do is give exact amounts because we don't know the exact amounts until the decision of the GA and what the fund is at that time. Because the exact amount depends on how many states have paid their contributions and how much is in the funds at what period, when that decision happens. Yet we need to operate for the first 6 months. We cannot wait from January to June for the General Assembly to meet.
Palestine.
Thank you, Madam Chair, again. I'm sorry to take the floor again. But indeed, the question of calendar for different organs and conventions is problematic. And you know that this year, for example, each 2 years, we have the General Conference. This year, it was a huge mess for members, for delegations. Right after the General Conference, it was immediately the 72 Convention, and then immediately 54, and then immediately Second Protocol, and then immediately the committee, and then immediately this committee. I think that December is very, very, overloaded. You know very well that for the other convention, 2005, the diversity, they changed the date, and it becomes a little bit more acceptable for the delegations. So your suggestion could be a solution, but we can think of changing the dates, having the General Assembly not in December, maybe, because in December there are still so many statutory meetings for the other conventions, a little bit before or something like this, and having the committee early June or end of May. And this would be good also for the climate question everywhere. In May and beginning of June, the climate would be different. So please take into consideration the changement of the calendar for both for the committee and the General Assembly. Thank you, Madam Chair, again.
Thank you, Palestine. Mr. Curtis. Philippines? And Armenia. Philippines, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. And not to prolong the debate, I think my colleague from Palestine's just recently delivered statement is something maybe we can talk about separately, really. But to address the issue of the principle that maybe the Bureau shouldn't be the ultimate deciding power on this, since it's a core function of the committee, we would have an amendment to paragraph 9 saying that decides that the utilization of the funds allotted under budget line 3 of the plan, other function of the committee, shall be considered by the next session of the committee, based on proposals prepared by the Secretariat. So it would come after the GA has made its decision in June, and the next session of the committee would be next November or December.
Between the 6 months.
And what do we do between the GA and the committee?
When we'd just like to ask, when did the Bureau decide on decides on the 20%? Because
the Bureau decides on the 20% the day after the GA, okay? Meaning we know what the actual amounts are. The closer we are to the GA, the closer we know to the actual amounts. So and then we start operationalizing. At the same time, it absorbs the past 6 months, which were not yet fully approved. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. So we would request that it be the GA that decides that, since the Bureau meets right after the GA, then you. So the GA should decide on the allocation.
Armenia.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. La question n'est effectivement pas une question de calendrier. La question, c'est est-ce que nous faisons confiance au bureau? C'est-à-dire, quand on dit au délègue au bureau, c'est ça la question. Et pour ce qui nous concerne, et pour ce qui concerne cette délégation, nous n'avons pas de problème à déléguer au bureau. Merci.
Thank you, Armenia. Palestine?
Again, a question to the Secretariat regarding the proposal done by Philippines. Why, if it is the day after the GA, you propose it, so what is the impediment not to propose it to the GA? Thank you.
I'm saying because this, I think, was the committee. Now, if you want to have that level of detailed discussion among all 178 state parties at the GA, we can do that. I imagine there are things to discuss at the GA, so that's a question for member states to discuss. Thank you.
Djibouti, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Madame la Présidente, c'est une question de simplicité. Nous avons une Assemblée générale, mais nous avons également un comité. Et c'est le comité qui délègue au secrétariat. Nous ne repartons pas vers l'Assemblée générale. Je crois que, comme l'a dit l'ambassadeur d'Arménie, c'est à nous de déléguer ce pouvoir au secrétariat, au comité, au bureau du secrétariat, et nous n'avons pas de problème pour ça. Cependant, nous pouvons ajouter, s'il faut, à l'intérieur, et devrait faire rapport.
Mr. Curtis.
Again, all of these expenditures are indeed reported, so it is transparent on how we use the fund. That is fully reported, and everything can be seen. So, yes.
Kuwait, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I must say, I agree with his distinguished delegation from the Philippines regarding if it's right after the General Assembly, it's might as well decided in the General Assembly since we have done time frame problems. There's a difference between reporting the use or the utilization of the fund or how it's going to be used. Clearly, all the fund is being reported in the General Assembly or with the money used, but here we're just discussing how this 20% will be utilized. And that's a difference. And I think, having more state parties to decide on that, I think, that's a wise decision. That's just my interpretation from the Philippines suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Palestine.
Very sorry, Madam Chair, to take the floor again. I agree with our colleagues. We fully we have confidence with the Secretariat and the Bureau. Palestine is member of the Bureau. But the question behind it, it's not a question, c'est pas une question de confiance. Nous faisons confiance à 100% et nous remercions et nous n'arrêtons pas de remercier et de féliciter le secrétariat pour leur travail. Cependant, étant membre du bureau, et dans le passé, nous étions membres du bureau, nous avons déjà en charge de prendre des décisions sur les international assistance moins de $100 000 déjà. Et donc le comité fait confiance au bureau. Ça, c'était pas ça la question. Je pense que c'est une question de formalité, pas plus, qui s'inscrit dans la transparence. Et nous sommes d'accord que tout est transparent dans cette convention grâce au travail fait par le secrétariat. Cependant, pour être honnête, étant membre du bureau dans le passé et actuellement encore membre du bureau, je peux vous dire comment ça se passe. Le bureau n'a pas le temps de rentrer dans les détails et de toute façon, même quand on rentre dans les détails, on n'a jamais opposé une proposition venue du secrétariat et monsieur le directeur peut le confirmer. On a le plus souvent adopté, très rarement, il y a eu des petites modifications. Cependant, en général, pour les questions de budget, on a fait confiance. Et puis, vous vous souvenez, on a aussi donné mandat au secrétariat d'utiliser les extra budgetary funds pour le personnel. Donc, nous sommes flexibles et c'est une question de formalité. Je pense qu'on ne doit pas s'attarder. Ce n'est pas une question de confiance encore pour notre collègue qui a dit question de confiance. Non, pas du tout. Ce n'est pas une question de confiance. C'est une question de simplicité et de transparence qui va dans l'ensemble de ce qui a été recommandé par le Governance Working Group. Donc voilà, c'est pas une... Ne parlons pas de confiance, on fait confiance au secrétariat, on fait confiance à notre bureau, parce que c'est notre bureau, c'est pas le bureau du secrétariat, mais cependant, pour que ça soit plus inclusif, quand même, que l'Assemblée générale puisse avoir le regard avant et pas après l'adoption du budget. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Merci, Palestine. Je donne la parole à... Again? No. Philippines, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to echo what was said by distinguished Ambassador of Kuwait and Ambassador of Palestine, we ourselves, we were a member of the Bureau the last 2 years, and we did have a discussion, I remember, about the 20% at one of the Bureau meetings in which we were a member. And it is not about trust, it's that we noted that such an important decision, such big amounts actually, affecting so many states parties and the communities behind elements, does deserve, I think, a richer discussion and would benefit from the feedback and inputs from states parties. And that's really the motivation of the question we had. And we noted that decisions in the Bureau, the documents are released, and there's not much. I mean, it's a small room in Fontenoy. We don't have much time to discuss. We don't have much time to consult with our electoral groups. You know, there's quite a push to have the decisions adopted then and there. So we would have a simple amendment to the paragraph. Of course, the Bureau could be delegated to further discuss, but I think in principle, the General Assembly is the supreme body of our convention, and we are answerable to the General Assembly under the convention. We would, instead of delegates to its Bureau, the authority to decide would put invites the General Assembly to decide upon the utilization. And I think this might just cover the concern, and we could see how it goes for the next General Assembly. And as other issues, this is something evolving. We could see it might actually benefit the budget to have the full force of the General Assembly approving that 20%. So we would formally request that delegates to its Bureau the authority be amended to invite the General Assembly to decide upon. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippines. I will now give the floor to Mr. Curtis, please.
I understand the spirit of the proposition, but the general way of budgets being presented is it is the committee that examines and presents a recommendation. So you would have here, in this case, the committee is telling its bureau to decide on something. So I'm just saying that it would be much more consistent if this 20% was part of the overall budget that you discuss here at the committee and then you present as a whole to the General Assembly, which in any case adopts the budget. The budget here that you are presenting, the breakdown here, has to go to the committee. It has to go to the GA, I mean. It's not the committee decides. What I'm trying to say is this, that it would be strange to have a separate budget procedurally wise for the 20% that's only done by the GA. It would be, and that's why I'm just want to be careful with this, like with the, careful with this draft decision. It would make more sense, therefore, for the breakdown of the 20% to be shown first in percentage forms, as it is done here, to a committee, and then for a committee to put that there. So I just want to have a bit of time to think, so that this decision, that if the decision is yes, we want the committee and then go to the GA, that we don't get in a strange situation like we are at the GA, where we have to present a budget, then we have to present another document which creates another part of a decision. So I would like the committee members to make sure we have it in line. So it means there may be a year of adaptation to catch up the system. That's what I'm proposing if this is the way it goes here.
Philippines.
Sorry to take the floor again, Madam Chairperson. Just to seek clarification, is it not possible then to have had that breakdown in the document for this committee? And why was not that provided? Thank you.
It is possible, but it's never been done. And why? I don't know. That's how it's started.
Why not?
Now, if we want to change, what I'm saying, if we want to change, we have to make sure that it follows the cycles. That's all. But yes, it's possible to have it in the and why it wasn't done, frankly, I don't. It's always been that way. It's how it's always been. That's my answer. What I'd like to say is if you make an amendment like this now, we go to the next GA with strange documents which don't fit. So it would be better to harmonize it and to get the system then harmonized. That's my point at this stage.
So we're under paragraph 9. If the committee wants to harmonize, how should it be on paragraph 9?
Think about it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I want to make sure we don't make a decision that we can't implement. Can we suspend and talk because we need to think what it means? So,
Austria and Kuwait.
Thank you very much. Well, listening to what the Secretariat has, maybe it makes sense to suspend the debate on this point and reflect and see what kind of ramifications these changes will bring. Seems quite far-reaching, and I think we should take a good time.
Kuwait?
I agree what the Secretariat said, but not just to suspend it would come up with a roadmap to cover, two things. To cover, the whole budget, to present it on the committee, and how to overcome this transition period. So it's suspended, given these two items to be clarified. Thank you.
Palestine?
Thank you. In the same vein, I think that we should wait for a proposal from Mr. Curtis, since so it would be the best way out, I think, if it is possible.
Mr. Curtis?
If I may try to capture what I'm hearing from the room, you would like broader discussion on the utilization of the 20%, which means it should come as part of the committee document that the committee observes and that the committee then recommends to the GA, because that's how the budget is done.
Exactly.
Okay? So as we have a committee budget now that is in percentages, that would also incorporate sub-percentages for the 20%. So we would have the percentages for the 20%. Then we have 4 domains, normally 4 expected results. They're aligned to the C5. We've already done this work. So it's done for the Bureau. So it's a question of how we would present that in a percentage form to the committee as part of the overall budget packet, and then it would, in any case, as the budget does, go for decision to the GA. So what we are asking is to think of procedurally how we do that, how we do a transit to propose something that works. And we need a little bit of time to think about that. Thank you.
Philippines?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've listened very closely and thank the Secretariat and all colleagues for their interventions. We do have a concrete proposal, having listened to the room. Perhaps the best thing would be to suspend the debate on this item for the time being. As Mr. Curtis said, the idea is that we have a discussion really on the allocation of the 20%. So we would suggest if the Secretariat could share this information of the breakdown at this session already, and that we come back to this item later on in our program of work, and we could appropriately reflect that consideration of that 20% breakdown in the draft decision and submit it to the GA. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippines. Now we will then suspend Armenia, please.
Oui, Madame la Présidente. Je pense que la problématique a été posée. Par conséquent, je pense qu'on peut vivre avec la formulation telle qu'elle est aujourd'hui et éventuellement nous projeter par rapport à la problématique posée pour que cette question-là soit examinée dans le futur. Me semble-t-il que c'est plutôt dans cette... dans l'état actuel des choses, est-ce qu'on peut effectivement, compte tenu de toutes les observations qui ont été amenées et pertinentes par le secrétariat, trouver des solutions qui soient opérationnelles dès à présent? Mais on a raison, et la délégation de Philippines a eu raison de poser le problème, et peut-être que cette question pourrait être posée dans le futur, de façon à ce qu'on puisse y trouver une solution. Donc moi, je proposerais qu'on adopte tel quel le projet d'amendement, le projet de paragraphe ici, et éventuellement de trouver, finalement, de nous projeter dans le futur pour que cette réflexion puisse être menée. Merci.
So I see now like two options or positions of the committee members. One is to adopt it, the paragraph 9, adopt as on screen, and the other one to suspend and reflect and come back later to this item. So I will ask the committee members if we can adopt paragraph 9 as shown on screen, taking into account what has been said on the session. Philippines and Palestine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we take note of the distinguished Ambassador of Armenia's suggestion, but perhaps we could adopt the other paragraphs that don't relate to budget line 3, but we do still need time, I think, to reflect on these procedural issues regarding budget line 3 and the 20% and how to have a better discussion and to improve really the governance of the committee and the fund. So perhaps you could suspend paragraph 9 and 10, because 10 is also related to that budget line 3. But we can move on to paragraphs 11 and 12, and then, but the overall decision would have to be, let's say, suspended until we have more clarity on that procedure. So this would be our, let's say, compromise or a suggestion at this stage to move forward. Thank you.
Jamaica.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question. If we take the position that Philippines is putting forward, how feasible is it for us to deal with it at this meeting?
We are not prepared to provide a breakdown of the budget straight away. When we do these budgets, we have to liaise with partners, liaise with field officers, understand who is likely to be able to implement what, where, and how. And we can't just draft a budget. I mean, we can give you broad ideas, but there's quite a bit of work into drafting this. So to say that we can come with a proposed 20% breakdown, unless we just cut and copy from the last biennium, is not realistic at this stage. So this is one of my concerns, if I may.
Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think there are valid points raised by distinguished delegates from Philippines and Palestine about this issue, and there are important issues, and they were in the Bureau for several years, and they experienced this issue from the closer, I would say, perspective. In that sense, we believe that it needs maybe further reflection, and I concur with what has been said, that we can go along with the other adoption with other paragraphs, but we can have further reflections on the paragraph 9 and 10, and then find a solution that would be acceptable in terms of what Secretariat raised the concerns, and also those issues that raised by the colleagues from Palestine and Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you. Palestine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very quickly, just I thought that Mr. Curtis a few minutes ago said that he was willing to suspend it and to come come back to it a little bit later. Since the Secretariat is willing, so there is no problem. Let's follow the suggestion of Philippines. We put between brackets 9 and 10, we adopt the others, and we wait for the Secretariat to come back for us. And in that case, we will change the practice. We understand that this is not the mistake of the current Secretariat. It has been the practice since a long time, since the beginning. But it is time to change it, and we should start at a moment. Since the Secretariat is willing to do so, we thank them, and we can go forward with it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Armeni?
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Il faut prendre le problème qui a été posé et l'inscrire et se projeter. Par conséquent, moi, j'aurais une proposition sur le paragraphe 9, c'est-à-dire le maintenir tel qu'il est et dire, peut-être, invite le comité à réfléchir sur l'affectation, sur l'utilisation des fonds alloués au titre point 3 à l'occasion d'une prochaine réunion. C'est-à-dire que ça donne la possibilité de pouvoir mûrir une proposition plutôt que de se mettre dès à présent la pression, en quelque sorte, sur des solutions à trouver, alors que quand on écoute ce que dit le secrétariat, j'ai l'impression que les questions sont complexes et plus complexes que ça n'y paraît. Par conséquent, il faut prendre le problème tel qu'il a été posé, l'inscrire dans le cadre de notre réflexion et même en faire finalement que ça trouve place dans le cadre de ce paragraphe note, on dirait, et invite le comité à approfondir sa réflexion sur l'affectation ou l'utilisation des fonds alloués au titre 1, alors à l'occasion d'une prochaine réunion, de sa prochaine réunion. Merci.
Palestine.
Je suis vraiment désolé pour notre collègue l'ambassadeur d'Arménie, mais ça ne fait que suspendre le problème et le reporter à la prochaine fois. On va se retrouver dans la même situation. Ça va vraiment c'est reporter le problème, pousser le problème à la prochaine session et on va se retrouver devant le même problème. Donc, le plus simple, puisque, encore une fois, le secrétariat est d'accord et ils sont prêts pour revenir, peut-être demain ou après-demain, ou on ne sait pas quand, on suspend 9 et 10 et on adopte les autres paragraphes. Merci.
Mr. Curtis.
Okay, I think what I can say is this. What's feasible for us to do at this stage, because this is the first we hear on it on the floor, so we don't come prepared, is to think of how we can transit from the current system to a new system. Okay. What is not feasible is to propose a breakdown of this current proposal for this committee that would be a meaningful and well thought out budget. That's not feasible. So just that we're clear on that. We can propose Philippines, I think.
Philippines.
Yeah. 20% of the budget is quite big. That's 1/5 of the entire fund. And, you know, other bureaus have other competences, but we just felt being, as the distinguished ambassador Azerbaijan mentioned, up close in the bureau, that we didn't feel so comfortable actually making such important decisions without full consultations in our electoral groups and having a real reflection. But we were asked to make big decisions, having seen the document maybe a day before, and that's the issue. So it's important. It's good governance. It's about how to allocate funds, knowing full and well as a member of the Bureau that you have fully consulted with your constituencies. So it's not really just procedural. There's also a lot of substance behind it. So what we understand, so if what we're hearing now is that in 6 months' time, the Secretariat would be ready to present specific proposals on the use of the 20%. So that's what we're hearing, that right after the General Assembly, it would be ready. Would they already, since 6 months is not a long time ahead, would they have at least a tentative breakdown at this stage that perhaps the committee, in its full functioning right, in its mandate actually, be able to look at so that we could be more comfortable sending the draft plan to the General Assembly and also delegating to the Bureau a little bit more, a precise framework rather than a very open-ended 20% envelope. And that's really concern. It's a real concern, Madam Chair, and we're not trying to delay proceedings at all, but trying to improve decision-making, and that's the thing. Thank you.
Mr. Curtis.
Okay, I'd just like to reiterate. We are very open to looking at changing the system to going towards that direction, and I'm not trying to block that. It does require, and I would remind it's not one day. When we do the GA, what has been done is the budget gets prepared and the Bureau is given 2 weeks. Now, that doesn't address the issue of broader consultation. What I'm saying right now is we're not ready, and those budgets take time to develop, and precisely because it is an important budget, we can't just whip it up in a few days. So the budget is detailed and takes time to develop, and it involves contacting partners with whom we think we can implement the budget. So again, we will be ready at the GA, but the GA should have a budget that's forwarded by the committee. So we just want to think about how we can do something which is a transition to a system where the committee would look at it and then the GA would decide on it. Thank you.
Palestine.
I hope that with this we can finalize the discussion on this. We understand now the Secretariat is unable to give us the definitive breakdown for the 20%. It is clear. We understood it. Okay. And now everybody understood that we need to change the system. And the Secretariat is also willing to reflect on this and come back to us with this question. So maybe we can ask our colleagues in the committee to be flexible for this session, only at this session, and ask the Secretariat. This doesn't mean that we will adopt it right now as it is. We should suspend it and come back with the Secretariat with a language that will address the issue for the next session. So I think that at this moment we need to suspend these 2 articles, adopt the following articles, and to stop there. I think this will save time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Curtis.
Okay. What we can do is prepare a decision that goes towards having the next committee examine the breakdown of the 20% within this in percentage terms. In the meantime, it is true that the way the Bureau has been handled is we give it to the Bureau the day after the GA has adopted the final budget, because because the GA, and then we tell the Bureau you have 2 weeks to reflect and approve, okay? That's the system that's been on hand. In fact, it's true that before the GA we have it, okay? But the GA, it's strange to have the GA discussing a budget that hasn't gone through, it would become a separate item to what the committee has recommended. So we will make the Bureau, how about this? We will make the Bureau, the breakdown for the Bureau available to the Bureau 2 weeks before the GA. If Bureau members then want to discuss it or whatever, but not as part of the budget item, and then the year after it would have gone to the committee, and then it will be following the normal cycle. That's what I'm starting to see as a feasible plan to make this amendment go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. So I think it's time to move on. Suspend articles, paragraph 9, 10, and move to paragraph 11. Authorizing a margin of flexibility between lines 4, 5, 6, and 7. Adopted. And finally, paragraph 12, to request the Secretariat to propose to the next session of the General Assembly draft revisions to the financial regulations of the fund. Are there any objections? Adopted. We'll come back later with paragraphs 9 and 10 once the Secretariat.
Before we go to item 10.
Before we go to item 10, we'll come back to this item to have a proposal.
Okay.